April 5, 1943, the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a black moonless night in the Solomon Islands, a stretch of water so deadly it's been nicknamed the Slot. On the hunt is the American destroyer USS O'Bannon, a steel-skinned greyhound of the sea, its crew scanning the darkness for any sign of the enemy. Suddenly, the lookout screams, "Contact, bearing, right on top of us." Out of the black water, a Japanese submarine, the RO-34, breaches the surface like a sea monster. It's so close, the American sailors can see the shocked faces of the Japanese crew. So close, they can hear them shouting. The two warships are locked in a deadly embrace, too close to fight. The destroyer's massive 5-inch guns can't aim low enough. The submarine's torpedoes are useless. For a terrifying moment, to crews, enemies in a global war, simply stare at each other over a few feet of churning water. Then, the Japanese sailors scramble for their deck gun. At this range, its shells would rip through the O'Bannon's unarmored hull like paper. The American destroyer, with over 200 men aboard, is about to become a floating coffin. They have seconds to live. They have no weapons that can save them, except one. This is not a joke. This isn't a tall tale. This is the declassified, documented, and absolutely true story of how a handful of American sailors, a quick-thinking commander, and a bag of potatoes turned a humble kitchen staple into a weapon of war. It's the story of a crazy idea born from pure desperation that did unjust save a ship. It created a legend that would become one of the most bizarre and beloved in the history of the United States Navy. Stay with me, because the truth is crazier than any fiction. Music swells and transitions to a more heroic, factual tone. To understand how a sack of spuds could change a naval engagement, you first have to understand the ship they were thrown from. The USS O'Bannon was no ordinary vessel. She was a Fletcher-class destroyer, the pinnacle of American naval engineering. Fast, agile, and bristling with guns and torpedoes, these ships were the workhorses of the Pacific Fleet. But they had a nickname, Tin Cans. The name was accurate. To achieve their incredible speed of nearly 40 knots, they sacrificed armor. A Fletcher-class destroyer had almost no protection. A single well-placed shell from an enemy cruiser, or even a submarine's deck gun, could cripple it. Their crews knew they were fighting in the most advanced warship of its kind, but also one of the most vulnerable. Survival depended not on armor, but on speed, aggression, and a whole lot of luck. And the USS O'Bannon was blessed with all three. Commissioned in June 1942, she was immediately thrown into the meat grinder of the South Pacific. Under the command of Commander Donald MacDonald, a brilliant and aggressive officer, the O'Bannon quickly earned a reputation for being in the thick of every fight. She fought in the brutal naval battles around Guadalcanal, dodging shells and torpedoes in the infamous Iron Bitum Sound, a graveyard for dozens of American and Japanese ships. She was good, and she was lucky. The crew began to call her the Lucky O. While other ships were torn apart by enemy fire or sunk by Japanese torpedoes, the O'Bannon always seemed to slip through unscathed. She rescued survivors from the sinking cruiser USS Juno. She screened aircraft carriers during critical missions. She hunted submarines and shelled enemy positions. In just her first few months of service, she had seen more combat than many ships see in their entire careers. The crew was a reflection of their ship, tough, battle-hardened, and fiercely proud. They were veterans who had faced down Japanese battleships and survived waves of dive bombers. They had seen hell and sailed right through it. They believed their ship was invincible, charmed, protected by some unseen force. They had no idea their most legendary fight wouldn't involve torpedoes, shells, or superior tactics. It would involve the contents of their kitchen pantry. April 5, 1943. The O'Bannon is on patrol near the island of Kolombangara. The night is pitch black. The sea is calm. It's the kind of boring, routine patrol that makes a crew restless. For hours, there is nothing but the hum of the engines and the hiss of the water against the hull. Then, the primitive surface search radar gets a faint blip. Contact. It's small and close. Commander MacDonald orders the ship to investigate. The crew snaps to action, men rushing to their battle stations. Adrenaline floods the decks. Is it a Japanese supply barge? A patrol boat? As they get closer, the radar contact disappears, likely because the target is too close for the radar's minimum range. MacDonald orders the engines slowed, the crew straining their eyes in the darkness. They are sailing blind, into an ambush. And then it happens. With a roar of venting ballast tanks, the Japanese submarine RO-34 surfaces directly in their path. It's a calamitous, one-in-a-million accident. The two vessels are on a collision course. Hard a starboard, McDonald bellows, the helmsman spins the wheel, and the 2,000-ton destroyer veers sharply. It misses, ramming the submarine by a few feet. But now, the situation is even worse. The O'Bannon isn't on a collision course anymore. It's sailing alongside the submarine, matching its speed, almost close enough to touch. A cold dread falls over the American crew. Every man on deck understands their impossible predicament. Their 5-inch deck guns, designed to fire at targets miles away, are mounted high on the ship. They cannot depress their barrels low enough to hit the submarine lying just below them. Their torpedoes need a minimum arming distance to be effective. They are useless. All of the O'Bannon's deadly technology, all of its incredible firepower, is completely and totally neutralized by sheer proximity. Aboard the RO-34, the Japanese crew, stunned by the sudden appearance of an American destroyer, recovers from the shock. Their commander gives the order. Hatches fly open and sailors spill onto the deck, scrambling to man their own 3-inch deck gun. Commander MacDonald and his crew watch in horror. The submarine's gun is smaller, but at this range, it doesn't matter. It's pointed directly at the O'Bannon's unarmored engine room. A few well-placed shells would turn their ship into a burning, sinking wreck. They had survived everything the Japanese Navy could throw at them for months, only to be taken out by a submarine they practically tripped over. They had maybe 30 seconds before the first shell hit. This is the moment where logic fails. It's the moment where training goes out the window, and pure, primal instinct takes over. The American sailors on deck, with no weapons to fire, did the only thing they could. They started to fight with whatever they could get their hands on. A group of sailors near the galley's supply lockers saw a crate of potatoes. Without a word, without an order, they acted. They grabbed the potatoes and began throwing them at the Japanese sailors on the submarine's deck. Imagine the scene. In the middle of the Pacific, two of the most advanced warships of their time are locked in a standoff, and the Americans open fire. With vegetables, it was a crazy idea. It was insane. It was pathetic, and it was absolutely brilliant. From the perspective of the Japanese sailors, the situation was terrifyingly confusing. They are on the deck of their submarine, under the shadow of a massive American destroyer, trying to load their gun. Suddenly, small, dark objects start raining down on them from above. What are they? In the heat of the moment, with adrenaline pumping, only one thought makes sense: grenades. They must be a new, smaller type of American hand grenade. The Japanese crew's training took over. Instead of loading their gun, they began frantically picking up the potatoes and throwing them overboard, trying to save their submarine from being blown apart by what they believed were explosives. Some of the potatoes simply hit the deck and rolled into the sea. The confusion was total. That confusion was all the O'Bannon needed. Those few seconds of hesitation were a gift from God. Commander MacDonald seized the opportunity. All engines ahead, flank, hard left rudder. He roared. The destroyer's engines screamed to life, and the ship surged forward, finally pulling away from the submarine. The moment they had enough distance, the O'Bannon's true power could be unleashed. Stand by, depth charges. As the destroyer cleared the RO-34, the crew on the fantail rolled a pattern of depth charges into the water. The charges were set to a shallow depth. A few seconds later, the ocean erupted. Massive plumes of water shot into the air, and the concussive force of the explosions slammed into the hull of the RO-34. The submarine, mortally wounded, shuddered and began to sink. The crew of the O'Bannon watched as their bizarre enemy slipped beneath the waves for the last time, leaving nothing behind but an oil slick and a few floating potatoes. On the bridge of the USS O'Bannon, there was a stunned silence, followed by an eruption of disbelief and laughter. They had done it. They had faced certain death and had survived because of the quickest, most ridiculous thinking in naval history. They had sunk a submarine with potatoes. Writing the after-action report was a challenge. How do you officially explain to the Admiralty that a major naval victory was precipitated by a food fight? Yet, the story was undeniable. The crew had used what they had, and it had worked. The legend of the potato incident spread like wildfire through the Pacific Fleet. The crew of the O'Bannon became famous. They were heroes, not just for their bravery, but for their unbelievable creativity. The story provided a much-needed moment of levity in the grim reality of the war. The story eventually reached the United States, and the Maine Potato Growers Association, immensely proud that their state's most famous export had been used as an instrument of war, sent a commemorative plaque to the ship. It was mounted on the wall of the ship's mess hall, a permanent reminder of their strangest victory. The plaque read, "To the USS O'Bannon, in tribute to her heroic crew, who, in a unique naval engagement in April 1943, used Maine potatoes to sink an enemy submarine." But the potato incident was not the end of the O'Bannon's story. It was just the most famous chapter. The ship's incredible luck held for the rest of the war. She fought in nearly every major campaign in the Pacific. She survived attacks by kamikazes that sank ships sailing right beside her. She weathered monstrous typhoons that tore other vessels apart. By the end of World War II, the USS O'Bannon had earned an astonishing 17 battle stars, one of the most decorated destroyers of the entire war. She also received a Presidential Unit Citation for her extraordinary service. And in all of her ferocious combat, through all of those battles, she never lost a single man to enemy action. Not one. Her crew believed the ship was protected, that their victory over the RO-34 was a sign that their ship was special. The Lucky O had proven that ingenuity and a little bit of absurdity were just as important as firepower. The story of the USS O'Bannon and the potato incident has become a cherished piece of naval folklore. It's a testament to the idea that in the chaos of battle, sometimes the most unexpected solution is the most effective. It wasn't the work of a single dismissed genius, but of a collective genius, an entire crew. From the commander on the bridge to the sailors on the deck acting, in perfect, desperate unison. Their crazy idea wasn't presented to skeptical generals in a briefing room. It was born, tested, and proven successful in less than a minute, with the price of failure being immediate death. The vindication wasn't a memo or a medal, but the sweet, simple fact of survival. The tale endures because it reminds us that history isn't just made by grand strategies and powerful machines. It's made by ordinary people thrust into extraordinary situations, forced to solve impossible problems with whatever they have on hand. It proves that the most powerful weapon in any arsenal is the human mind's ability to innovate under pressure. The USS O'Bannon fought with guns, torpedoes, and cannons. But on one dark night in the Pacific, she proved that victory doesn't always go to the one with the biggest weapon. Sometimes, it goes to the one with the quickest mind and the closest potato.